distribution. In this episode, we're going to focus on the part of cryptography that quietly determines whether everything else works or fails: key management. New learners often treat encryption like a protective wrapper around data, but the wrapper is only as strong as the keys that lock and unlock it. If keys are generated poorly, stored carelessly, shared too widely, or never rotated, then even strong algorithms can become meaningless. Key management lifecycle planning is the disciplined process of deciding how cryptographic keys are created, protected, used, moved, rotated, revoked, and eventually destroyed, all in a way that matches the system's needs and the organization's risk tolerance. This topic matters for ISSAP because architects must design systems that remain secure and operable over time, not just on day one. It also matters for beginners because keys are not just secrets. They are high-value assets that must be treated like critical infrastructure. By the end, you should have a clear, practical understanding of how the lifecycle stages fit together and what can go wrong when any stage is ignored. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good way to start is to define what a cryptographic key is without getting lost in math. A key is a piece of information that allows a cryptographic operation to happen, such as encrypting or decrypting data, creating a digital signature, or verifying that a signature is valid. The key is what gives cryptography its control over who can read or modify protected information. If an attacker gets the key, they often do not need to break encryption because they can simply use the key the way the system does. That is why the system's security depends as much on protecting keys as it does on choosing good algorithms. Keys also come in different forms and serve different roles, like long-term identity keys, short-lived session keys, or keys dedicated to specific data sets. A single system may use many keys simultaneously, and each one may have different protection needs. Lifecycle planning is therefore about handling not only one key, but a whole ecosystem of keys, each with a purpose and an expected lifetime. When you hear key management discussed at a high level, it is really about controlling who can use which cryptographic power, when, and under what conditions. Generation is the first lifecycle stage, and it is more important than it sounds, because weak keys can undermine everything later. Keys should be generated using strong randomness, so they are not predictable, and the generation process should be controlled so unauthorized parties cannot influence or observe it. In many systems, keys must be generated inside a trusted environment, so the raw key material is never exposed in an unsafe place. This is especially true for high-value keys like those that protect large amounts of sensitive data or establish trust for a whole service. Key generation also includes deciding key size and algorithm compatibility, because a key must match the cryptographic method it is used with. But the architectural concerns go beyond size, because you also decide whether keys are unique per system, per tenant, per environment, or even per object. More uniqueness can reduce blast radius, meaning fewer things are exposed if one key is compromised, but it can also increase management complexity. Planning at this stage is about setting the rules for how many keys exist, how they are created, and what guarantees you need about their unpredictability and provenance. Once a key is generated, it has to be stored, and storage is often where key management succeeds or fails. Storing a key means protecting it at rest and controlling who and what can access it. A beginner might think storing a key in a configuration file or an environment variable is normal, but those places can be copied, logged, backed up, or read by processes that should not have access. Key storage must consider both external attackers and internal misuse, including accidental leakage by developers and administrators. A good design isolates keys from the data they protect, because if keys sit right next to encrypted data, then compromising that storage reveals everything. Storage also includes protecting keys in memory when they are loaded for use, because keys that sit unprotected in memory can be stolen by malware or debugging tools. This is why systems often use protected key stores and strict access policies. But even without naming products, the concept is clear. Keys should live in a place designed to protect secrets, not in places designed for general configuration. The more valuable the key, the more you should invest in hardware-backed or highly controlled storage, and the more you should restrict who can retrieve or use it. Distribution is the stage where keys or key-related material must be made available to the components that need them, and it is a stage filled with subtle risks. Sometimes distribution means moving a key from a secure store to an application instance so it can decrypt data. Other times, distribution means issuing public key certificates that allow others to verify identity or signatures without exposing the private key. The key insight is that distribution should minimize exposure of sensitive key material while still enabling legitimate use. A common mistake is sharing keys broadly to make things just work, which may solve short-term friction but creates a major long-term security problem. Instead, architects prefer approaches where components request cryptographic operations as a service rather than receiving raw keys, or where keys are wrapped, meaning encrypted under another key for transport and storage. Distribution also has to deal with scale, such as many service instances starting and stopping, and it has to deal with recovery, such as how a system can restart after a failure without someone manually copying secrets around. Planning distribution is therefore about designing an automated, auditable, and least privileged path for key use, so secrets do not spread uncontrollably across the environment. Access control for keys deserves special attention because key access is effectively the right to decrypt, sign, or impersonate. When you plan key management, you should define which roles, systems, and processes are allowed to use each key and under what circumstances. This includes human roles like security administrators and automated roles like services that run in production. The principle of least privilege applies strongly here, because not every component that touches encrypted data should be able to decrypt it, and not every administrator should be able to export keys. You also want separation of duties, meaning the person who manages the key policies might not be the same person who can approve exporting or rotating keys. For beginners, it helps to think of keys like master keys to rooms in a building. If too many people have copies, you lose control over who enters and when. A strong design uses tight permissions, logs key use, and makes key access visible so unusual patterns can be investigated. Planning access control is not only about stopping attackers, it is also about limiting accidental misuse and making investigations possible when something goes wrong. Key usage itself is a life cycle phase that people forget, but it is where you ensure keys are used safely and consistently. Usage includes deciding which cryptographic operations a key is allowed to perform, such as encryption only, decryption only, signing only, or verification only. It also includes ensuring that keys are used within approved contexts, such as only in certain environments or only for certain data categories. Without strong controls, a key intended for one purpose might be reused in another, which can create unexpected vulnerabilities and complicate audits. Usage planning also includes deciding whether keys are long-lived or short-lived, because short-lived session keys reduce exposure and are often generated dynamically, while long-lived keys establish persistent trust and require stronger protection. Another aspect is limiting how much data is protected under a single key, which affects the impact of compromise and the feasibility of re-encryption during rotation. Usage should be monitored because keys being used at unusual times or in unusual volumes can indicate compromise or misuse. The takeaway is that keys are not only stored and moved, they are actively used, and that use must be governed like any other privileged operation. Rotation is one of the most important life cycle stages, and it often reveals whether an organization's design is mature. Rotating a key means replacing it with a new one, usually on a schedule or after certain events, such as suspected compromise. Rotation limits risk by reducing how long a single key remains valid, and it also helps with compliance requirements. But rotation is difficult if the system is not designed for it, because encrypted data may need to remain readable across key changes. Some systems use a hierarchy of keys, where a higher-level key encrypts lower-level keys, making it easier to rotate without re-encrypting all data. Others use version keys, where data is tagged with which key version protected it, and systems keep older keys available for decryption while using new keys for encryption. The key architectural point is that rotation must be planned into the design. It cannot be bolted on later without pain. If rotation requires manual steps across many systems, it becomes slow and error-prone, and people will avoid doing it until a crisis forces them. A good lifecycle plan makes rotation routine, safe, and testable, so the organization is not learning how to rotate keys during an emergency. Revocation and compromise handling are closely tied to rotation, but they are more urgent because they assume something has gone wrong. If a key is compromised, you may need to revoke it so it is no longer trusted, especially for keys used for identity or signatures. Revocation means other parties must learn that the key should not be used, which introduces distribution and timing challenges. In the case of encryption keys, revocation is complicated because data encrypted with that key may still need to be accessed, but continuing to use a compromised key is unsafe. That may require re-encrypting data under a new key and carefully controlling access during the transition. This is why incident response and key management intersect. You need procedures for rapidly disabling or limiting key use, assessing scope, and restoring trust. A lifecycle plan should include what triggers a compromise response, who has authority to act, and how to prevent the compromise from spreading further. It should also include how to preserve evidence, because understanding how a key was exposed matters for preventing repeat incidents. For beginners, the core idea is that keys can be stolen like any other asset, and the system must be designed to recover trust without total collapse. Key destruction is the final lifecycle phase, and it is easy to overlook because it happens at the end of a key's life. Destroying a key means ensuring it cannot be recovered or used again, which is essential when data must be made permanently unreadable or when systems are decommissioned. If you keep old keys indefinitely, you keep the possibility that old encrypted data can be decrypted later, which may violate retention rules or privacy promises. Destruction also matters when a key is compromised, because you may need to ensure it cannot reappear through backups or copied configuration files. A good plan includes clear criteria for when keys should be destroyed, how destruction is verified, and how it is recorded for audits. Destruction must be coordinated with data lifecycle, because destroying a key can render data unrecoverable, which might be desired for secure deletion but disastrous if done prematurely. This highlights that key lifecycle planning cannot be separated from data governance and retention decisions. The simplest way to hold it in your head is that keys control access to data, so destroying keys is a powerful act that should be deliberate, authorized, and documented. Throughout the lifecycle, logging and auditability are essential because key management is a high-value target and a common source of security incidents. A well-planned system records key events such as creation, access requests, successful uses, rotation, and revocation actions. Those records support security monitoring and also support investigations after incidents. But you must be careful not to log sensitive key material, because that would create a new leak. The goal is to log metadata about key use, such as which key identifier was used, by which component identity, at what time, and for what class of operation. This helps detect anomalies, like a key being used by an unexpected service or being accessed at unusual rates. Auditability also supports governance, because it allows reviewers to confirm that only approved roles can use certain keys and that rotations happen as required. For an ISSAP learner, the important point is that key management is not only about secrecy, it is also about controlled, observable use. If you cannot observe key events, you cannot confidently claim you control them. When you put it all together, planning the key management lifecycle is about building a secure and reliable path of custody for cryptographic power from the moment a key is created to the moment it is retired. Generation must produce strong, unpredictable keys under controlled conditions. Storage must keep keys separated from the data they protect and restrict who can access them, with strong protection against theft. Distribution must provide keys or key services to the right components without spreading secrets everywhere, and access control must ensure least privilege and separation of duties. Usage must stay within intended purposes, with monitoring that makes misuse visible, and rotation must be designed as a routine capability rather than a crisis-only procedure. Revocation and compromise handling must restore trust quickly, and destruction must align with data lifecycle so the right things remain accessible and the right things become irrecoverable. This is why architects treat key management as a first-class design problem. It touches security, operations, availability, compliance, and recovery all at once. If you can explain key management as an end-to-end lifecycle with clear decisions and failure modes at each step, you have moved from thinking about cryptography as an abstract concept to thinking about it as a living system that must survive real-world change.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.